Over the course of 2017, something that had been building in my mind for years finally boiled over. I decided to completely give up on the AAA gaming scene. All the malfeasant, predatory practices by devs and publishers made me finally snap, and I didn't buy a single AAA game during the entire year. I've decided that I'm done with
AAA gaming
until the industry gets some of the regulation and oversight that it has been in desperate need of ever since... when does this all date back to? Maybe to here? I still play and love lots of indie games and will continue to do so. And by the way, I count CD Projekt stuff as indie. But since I was done with AAA, I needed something to fill that void, so I started thinking about some alternatives. I like board games and card games, and I've been really loving the Arkham Horror card game, even though it is quite a money sink if you get really into it. But at least it isn't trying to grab your money in the kind of insidious ways that AAA and mobile games do. It's upfront about it. The purchases involve one-off costs, and that's all, like video games used to be back in the good old days. But I found that, even though I do enjoy them, board games and card games didn't quite provide what I was looking for. So I decided to give pen and paper RPGs a go, specifically Dungeons & Dragons. I chose it because I was watching a lot of YouTube videos about it and became enamored with its vast potential for variation and choice. I first thought of making this video to try and persuade people who play video games to consider giving D&D a try. So I will talk about it as if I'm talking to someone who has never played a pen and paper RPG and who knows very little about them. So let's talk the basics. A Dungeons & Dragons campaign typically involves about 4 or 5 players and a Dungeon Master or Game Master. And I should just note here that you don't have to play pen and paper RPGs in person. These days it is increasingly common for people to play it online, using video calls over Discord or Skype. In my opinion, this method of playing is in no significant way lesser than playing in person. And from the point of view of a DM, there's actually some considerable advantages to running your games in this way. At first glance, the Dungeon Master acts as sort of the equivalent of a dev in a video game. They create or select the world that the game takes place in, and they populate it with non-player characters, monsters, items, and locations. They create a main quest line that typically ends with some kind of epic boss fight type encounter, and they perform the roles of NPCs that the players interact with, giving those characters a voice and thus fleshing out the game world and making it more engrossing. How much work a DM puts in before the players get involved is up to each DM. Some like to fill all the towns and cities near to the starting location with unique NPCs and side quests. Others prefer to do the bare minimum in the beginning and wait to see what the players do. Because the players in a pen and paper RPG aren't actually much like the players in a video game. And the reason for this difference all comes down to the sheer amount of player choice. See, a player can do whatever they want. If a player decides to do something outside of the scope of what the DM has designed for the campaign, there's no invisible walls, no missing dialogue options. It's the DM's job to facilitate what they are trying to do. If it's something big or way outside what the DM has created, it may require some time, and thus might result in that particular gaming session ending, and the DM going away and putting some work in to populate a new area of the game world. The scope of your options as a player in a pen and paper RPG is so much wider than in a video game. I found this freedom very liberating, and this is touching on the main reason I wanted to expound the qualities of pen and paper RPGs. Like I said, I first thought of making this video to persuade gamers to try D&D, but over the course of becoming more and more familiar with what pen and paper gaming is all about, that shifted more to me trying to appeal to fiction writers and those interested in storytelling, because it isn't just the DM that's telling the story. They lay the groundwork and create a canvas that the players then paint on by making choices. I've come to call this phenomenon shared storytelling, and it is the heart of what makes pen and paper RPGs so wonderful. Pen and paper RPGs aren't really like games. At least not what a video gamer might normally understand games to be. I mean, don't get me wrong, they are games, but the completely open-ended nature of them combined with the way the DM and the players work together to build the story, elevate them beyond what I had come to think games are coming from a video gaming background. I think this quote from John Carmack kind of sums up the problem with video games. Of course, the stories in games have improved a lot since he said this, but the storytelling in the vast majority of video games is still quite limited, and this type of mentality is still a major problem. Gameplay first is one of Blizzard's mottos.
You know, one of our core values at Blizzard is gameplay first. And gameplay really trumps anything. And so if there's a gameplay reason why something is more fun than something else, we try to work the backstory around that so it supports the more fun gameplay.
And I can't really fault them for that mentality given the nature of video games. But compare that to pen and paper RPGs, in which the storytelling potential is limitless, and the mechanics of the games encourage creativity, collaboration, and individual expression. And this is especially true for D&D, because D&D has probably the widest scope of possibilities of any pen and paper RPG. It's typically associated with fantasy settings, but you can easily create a game world depicting a historical setting, like medieval England or ancient Rome, and you can even create a science fiction world. Not only does the Dungeon Master's Guide offer some ideas and options for this as a fun possibility for a campaign, it even justifies it in the lore. There's a race of creatures called the Illithids, also known as Mind Flayers. No, they don't look anything like that. They look like this. These beings have a vast interstellar empire, and they can time travel. They have a host of other classic D&D monsters that act as their thralls, beings who they've conquered and subjugated, who now work for them as foot soldiers and cannon fodder. The Illithids have starships and other advanced technology. So you can see, the options you have as a game master in designing a D&D campaign are vast. You can create an entirely new world from scratch and make it as deep, huge, and fleshed out as you want, and you can even give that world to other DMs. Dragonlance is a D&D campaign setting that was created by husband and wife Tracy and Laura Hickman on a car journey, then expanded upon with the assistance of fantasy author Margaret Weiss. Now it's a fully fleshed out game world that has been host to the campaigns of tens or even hundreds of thousands of people. The modern 5th edition's base campaign setting is the Forgotten Realms. And just to show you how huge that game world is, check this out. This is the central set of joined continents on the planet ABEIR TORIL, but most of the official campaigns take place in the continent of Faerun, so let's zoom in a bit. The first campaign I wrote last year began in Aglarond, which is this area. This small section of Faerun has towns, cities, and villages. It has its own unique culture and history. But like I said before, you don't have to set your campaigns on Faerun or the wider world of ABEIR TORIL. You can set them anywhere you like. And the game's attitude towards this is to think of all these potential settings as basically parallel universes. And if you do set a game on ABEIR TORIL, it will be your version of the world. If you decide you don't like some particular detail as laid out in the base lore, you can just change it in whatever way you want, and there will probably be little things you want to change. So even the official setting becomes its own universe just for your campaign. And if you want, you can play one of the official campaigns released for the game by the Wizards of the Coast, of which there are many, and some of them are really, really cool, like Tomb of Annihilation, for example. If you check out D&D content online, you'll see a lot of people talking about how much fun that is, and there's a reason why so many people love it. But even with those official campaigns, the DMs are still free to alter any specific details, though it is best to do so in such a way that accounts for changes made in order to not unbalance the game. In my experience though, this isn't a difficult thing to do, though it may take a little bit of practice. And the D&D multiverse also comes with multiple planes of existence, all of which are different and interesting. So not only does each world sit side by side as parallel universes, D&D's multiverse map also spreads out on the other axis as well. That main questline of my campaign that I mentioned before had the players venturing into this large forest and finding a portal to a specific part of the plane called the Feywild. And this specific part of that plane, which once broke off from the Feywild and became a separate area, then reconnected to it, though my campaign was set before that reconnection happened, that specific part is the home to the very rare star elves and various other exotic life forms. The Feywild is a great setting, but so are the other planes as well. There's so much potential just in the pre-designed places the game offers you. And by the way, a lot of the old D&D video games from the 90s are set in this area of Faerun, the Sword Coast, like Neverwinter Nights, Icewind Dale, and of course Baldur's Gate. It's a great, highly detailed place to set a D&D campaign if you as DM don't want to do too much of your own creative work in designing a campaign, which is a totally legit choice. D&D doesn't punish you at all for deciding not to create your own settings. For me, though I am a fiction writer who very much intends someday to make my own game worlds, I don't feel confident enough to do that just yet, and so have been relying on the pre-designed ones so far, and I've been having a great time doing so. So anyway, as I was saying before, the DM creates a framework for the setting and the story, then the players come in and start making choices. And if you're the DM, your players will surprise you and do things you haven't anticipated, which far from being annoying or irritating, is usually really fun and exciting. One of the best things about D&D is the amazing amount of resources that are available for it online, made by the community. There's mountains of this stuff, it's awesome. Here on YouTube there are some amazing channels putting out D&D related content of all different kinds, like tutorials for making terrain, for painting figurines, for helping the players figure out what races, classes, and backgrounds they think might be fun to try, with YouTubers recounting interesting and endearing stories from their campaigns. But the category of video I want to talk about here is content designed to aid DMs in creating or personalizing their campaigns. There's a ton of great lore-based content on YouTube, but I think I can demonstrate my point just by showing a couple of clips from a video on one such channel, run by fellow New Zealander AJ PICKETT, also known as the Mighty GLUESTICK. His channel is mostly centered around teaching DMs about the creatures and settings that a DM might choose to use in their campaign, and it was while watching his content that it first struck me how unique and interesting the storytelling can be in D&D. I know it's been around for decades, but it was new to me at the time, and as a fiction writer, specifically a screenwriter, I was really blown away by the opportunities for storytelling that D&D can provide. So the following is 2 clips from AJ's video about gelatinous cubes, which are a large, transparent, dungeon-dwelling monster that can absorb living beings and other materials inside itself and devour them with acid. They can also be subjected to clonal fragmentation by an external force, a real-world process which is described in this wiki article. Here's the clips.
They are very transparent and very easy to walk into in a dimly lit dungeon environment. You may describe it as ahead you see a slight mist to the air, or a slight smokiness. As you walk forward, there's a slight sound of like your feet are echoing slightly differently, and then smack, you're right into the side of it. I'm stuck to this thing, and then your friends come up and they DC 12 try and pull you out of this thing, and meanwhile it's going and hitting you with acidic burning tendrils. Quite nasty, and of course it can engulf you. DC 12 dexterity saving throw, or you start to slide inside this thing as your skin is literally peeling away from your flesh, and then you see little bits of white bone and stuff, and it's sizzling away as this thing is eating at you. These things have all sorts of capabilities for a symbiotic relationship with dungeon denizens. And if it is a multicellular organism, it would be quite easy for another creature to lop off a chunk of it, pick it up, put it into some sort of safe container, keep it out of direct sunlight, keep it fed, and then move it to their environment, put it into a cesspit of some kind, and this thing would happily digest away all that organic material as long as it can't crawl up out of the sides of it. You've got a safe garbage disposal that keeps your environment nice and clean. It's a free little acid pit that just regenerates and chews through anything that you throw in there. So, old carcasses, bones, bits of femur, hands, that sort of thing. Your mother-in-law, throw it all over there. Nobody cares. So it's a perfect means of disposing of evidence. You could have something like a very crooked guild of assassins or something like that actually disposes of bodies in a gelatinous cube. And if you're in an environment where you're broken into their lair and you're confronting the assassins and things are going really badly for them, they could actually hit a lever and release the gelatinous cube, which falls out of there with like still digesting remains of some prominent town member that you can recognize by his brass shield that he wears, or his badge is the last thing remaining, his silver badge.
In that moment of providing the idea that an assassin's guild could use a gelatinous cube as a body disposal system, AJ demonstrates the kind of storytelling options that are available in D&D. That's not something he got from one of the official books or anything, that's his own idea that he is freely sharing with other DMs. And this kind of open-ended, free exchange of storytelling ideas and creativity is something I find so refreshing. It's sorely lacking in other mediums of fiction. AJ just wants to give other dungeon masters ideas to make their campaigns as fun for their players as possible. If you're a DM or a player, or you're interested in learning about D&D lore, I highly recommend checking his channel out. He's a deeply creative person whose knowledge about D&D is immense, and he has tons and tons of good, interesting ideas. There really is nothing quite like pen and paper RPGs, and the potential they have for storytelling is both huge and unique. Being involved in shared storytelling, either as a player or as a DM, is a really fun and engrossing experience, and I cannot recommend it highly enough. If you're a gamer and looking for a new and more open-ended, freer kind of experience, or if you're a fiction writer and you find this concept of shared storytelling intriguing, please, I urge you to give it a go. I don't feel like I've truly done D&D justice in this video, because it's so hard to communicate just how immersive, fun, and rewarding its shared storytelling and gameplay can be, or how much variety and freedom D&D offers, but I hope I've provided a small glimpse of that. Well, that's all for now. Have a wonderful day, everyone.
These hobgoblins don't like their odds. They bolt into the jungle.
Yeah, you better run. Go find a name that's not just another creature's name plus hob.
Actually, Jeff, it is believed that hobgoblins came first, and that they created the other goblinoid races, those being goblins and bugbears.